All right, get ready to explore some fascinating stuff. We're taking a deep dive into the heart of African spirituality today, specifically how sub-Saharan African belief systems view the concept of God. You've been exploring these traditions with us, and one thing that really stands out is this idea of a single, all-powerful God, the Creator.
Yeah, that's a key thing, definitely. That foundational belief about a single creator God as the source of all life. It's something you see across so many cultures in sub-Saharan Africa. It's a pretty profound concept when you think about it, how that connects to the human experience.
It really is. And the source we're looking at today really digs into that connection. It even goes so far as to suggest that not acknowledging this Creator God, well, it's seen as a sign of lacking spiritual wisdom.
Right. It's not just about like blindly believing. It's deeper than that, more about understanding your place in this vast spiritual order. That's a big part of these traditions.
It's about tapping into something much bigger than yourself.
Okay, so let's talk about this creator God. Like, what are the specifics? Because this source, it lays out some pretty powerful attributes. Creator, supernatural, pure spirit. I mean, it's quite a list.
It's like if the Creator God had a resume, it would be very impressive, right? But one thing that sets this Creator God apart from some other religions is that there's no defined gender. You won't find statues or anything depicting this God. It's either male or female.
Oh, interesting. No physical image at all.
Exactly. It really highlights this idea of God as a purely spiritual being, not limited by any physical form. It's pretty powerful when you think about it that way.
It is. It makes you think about how people would experience this God if there are no physical representations. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the source actually suggests that people experience this God through their daily life. Like, imagine a really good harvest, a healthy child being born. These are all seen as blessings, tangible evidence of the Creator God's presence.
I see, I see. And then on the other hand, things like a drought, or if someone gets sick unexpectedly, that could be interpreted as, maybe a sign of God's displeasure.
So it's this constant give and take, like a direct line of communication between the spiritual and physical.
That's a great way to put it. And speaking of communication, even the names that different cultures use for the creator God, they tell us a lot.
Oh, really? Like what?
Like the Agikuyu people, they use the term Ngai, which emphasizes God's role as like a provider. But then the Luo people, they use Nyakalaga, which emphasizes God's omnipresence, the fact that God is everywhere.
Wow, so much depth in just a name. It's incredible how these names can give us a glimpse into how each culture perceives and connects with this powerful God. So we've been talking about this powerful creator God, this central figure, but how do people actually, navigate their relationship with this divine force? Like, what's considered respectful and what crosses the line?
Yeah, it's not so much about like a list of rules, It's more about recognizing the immense respect and reverence owed to the creator. It's about understanding your place, like where we fit in this whole like grand spiritual order.
Okay, I'm with you so far. So like, how does that translate into everyday life?
Okay, so think of it like a two-sided coin, right? One side, it's about actions that show reverence for the creator.
Like worship.
Yeah, worship's a big part of it, but it's bigger than that even. Like having children, that's seen as participating in creation, carrying on the creator's legacy. It's a powerful way to honor that creative force.
So it's like raising a family is a way to align yourself with the creator's will.
Wow, that's pretty profound.
It is. It shows how deeply interconnected life and creation are in these systems. But then the flip side of the coin, and this is where it gets interesting, it's about avoiding stuff that might be disrespectful to the creator, things that might be considered, I don't know, maybe even bothersome.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Like what kinds of things? Well, one example is this idea of like not questioning the creator's will, just accepting things as they are, without complaint. It's like, what's the point of questioning a power you can't even begin to understand?
It's about surrendering to that power, accepting that questioning this ultimate force isn't the way to approach this relationship.
Exactly. And here's another fascinating thing. The source talks about avoiding like unnecessary requests to the creator. Don't bother the big guy unless it's really important, right?
Now, that's a contrast to some other beliefs where you're practically encouraged to pray constantly, to ask for whatever you want. What's the thinking there?
It goes back to respect, recognizing that asking for stuff all the time, it kind of diminishes the weight of calling on this ultimate power. It's about reserving those requests for things that truly matter.
Not taking that connection for granted, right?
Yeah, exactly. And avoiding these these frivolous requests, it suggests this interesting need for balance, to keep things harmonious between humanity and the divine. Like, don't mess with the natural order.
So we're talking about reverence, respect, this really careful consideration of how we interact with the divine. But the source also talks about some more concrete practices, things like oaths and spirit possession. Oaths and spirit possession. Ooh, now we're getting to the good stuff, I see. Tell me everything. What can you tell us about how those practices work?
Well, there are, these really fascinating ways that these cultures kind of bridge the gap between, the earthly and the spiritual. Like, take oaths, for example. You might think of an oath, like in the simplest terms, like just a promise.
Yeah, a solemn promise.
Right, exactly. But it's so much bigger than that in this context. You're not just making a promise to another person, right? You're invoking the creator God as a direct witness to your word.
Wow. So it was like your integrity's on the line and the stakes are as high as they can possibly be. That makes those intense rituals that the source talks about, with the oaths in Africa, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Exactly. It's about making that commitment, making it real, connecting it to the spiritual realm with like these powerful actions, objects.
Well, yeah, the source even mentioned a man walking at night, naked, carrying a tusk filled with, like, all this stuff, hair, nails, even hyena excreta. I mean, talk about a visual reminder of your promise.
Right. It makes you think twice about breaking that oath. And those elements, they're not just random, Each one, it's chosen for its, like, symbolic meaning, its connection to these deep, like, spiritual beliefs and forces, right? It's serious business.
Oh, absolutely. No messing around with that. It's a powerful deterrent for sure. The source even mentioned using oaths to, like, identify criminals, right? Like, how does that even work?
Right. So imagine, no fancy forensic science back then. So calling on the creator God to reveal the truth, that was serious stuff. You accuse someone of stealing, okay? Make them swear an oath on some powerful object. And the belief was that, the creator God, being all-knowing, would know the truth. And if they lied, watch out. Because, misfortune, illness, you name it. It was like a way to access, like, a divine justice system,
Wow, it's like a spiritual lie detector test.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Okay, so we've talked about oaths. What about spirit possession? That's this idea that the spirits, like spirits of the dead, can interact with the living, right?
Right. But here's the thing. It's not always seen as something to be feared, like in some cultures. It's more about recognizing that interconnectedness again, The physical and spiritual realms, they overlap, they influence each other.
Although the source did mention that there are, good spirits and bad spirits.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And while bad spirits, they're often associated with, bad stuff happening, misfortune, illness, that kind of thing. But the good spirits, they're super important, especially when it comes to healing and like divination.
Oh, interesting. So it's about tapping into that wisdom from the spirit world to help guide and support the living.
Exactly. It's another way these traditions acknowledge that the veil between, the living and the dead, it's thin. And that the unseen world, it has power.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it, From the nature of the creator God to oaths and spirit possession, it's clear that these beliefs have a huge impact on how people live their lives, how they understand their place in the world.
It really makes you think. And as you continue exploring African spirituality, keep this in mind. How do these beliefs affect everything from, how we treat each other to how we view the natural world?
It's a journey of discovery, that's for sure. And on that note, that wraps up our deep dive for today. We hope you've enjoyed exploring these African concepts of God and spirituality with us. Keep those questions coming, keep exploring, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.